dinner last night. I'm wondering if you could take us into the thinking and the decision-making of why the president decided to invite us.
I'm just not going to get into family discussion, personal family discussion. As you know, Hunter is his son. I'm just not going to get into it.
Let me ask you this. If Hunter Biden wasn't the president's son, would he have invited someone who had just reached a plea agreement with federal prosecutors 2 days earlier?
A couple of things. Again, that's his son. He's a family member. It is not uncommon for family members to attend events at the White House. You could look at past presidents. I'm sure you have. So that is not uncommon. As it relates to anything related to Hunter, I'm just not going to respond to it from here.
Can I follow up on that?
No, I just called in somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Kirby wouldn't answer James's question, though. Are you going to answer the question? I mean, not a reasonable question to ask whether the President of the United States was involved, as this message seems to suggest, in some sort of a coercive conversation for business dealings by his son. Is that something, if he wasn't, then maybe you should tell us?
So here's the thing, and I appreciate the question. I believe my colleague at the White House Counsel has answered this question already, has dealt with this, has made it very clear. I just don't have anything to share outside of what my colleagues have shared, and so I would refer you to him and the DOJ. Just not going to comment from here.
Text message.
I will. What I can tell you is I know that my colleague has dealt with this. He addressed this at the White House Counsel. I just don't have anything else to share. I just answered the question. I just answered the question.
No, you didn't. Yes or no? Was the president involved in the shakedown attempt?
Stephen, I just answered the question. It's not up to you how I answer the question. I just answered the question by telling you my colleagues at the White House Counsel has dealt with this, and I would refer you to them. Go ahead.
Can you just remind us what your colleague said from the White House Counsel so we have it from you at the podium?
I would refer you to them, and they will share their statement with all of you.
My question is about your statements from that podium. You've stated that the president stands by his comment from the 2020 campaign that he never once discussed his son's overseas business dealings with his son. And you stood at that podium and you reaffirmed that. Do you stand by your reaffirmation?
What I will say is nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And I will leave it there. Anything else, I will refer you to the White House Counsel.
This is not a change?
I just answered the question. You just asked me, does my statement change? I just told you nothing has changed. That's answering the question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The president was there 2 days
Go ahead,
prior.
Stephen. I'm calling on your colleague right now. Go ahead.
Thank you. To follow up on my colleague, is there anything that you can say with regard to this text message and what the president's son was alleging? Was the president there or not?
I would refer you to my colleagues at the White House Counsel. They have addressed this, and I refer you to them. Go ahead.
Karine, have you spoken to the president about this? Have you asked him whether he was there with his son on July 30th?
This is not a conversation that I've had with the president. Again, I would refer you to the White House Counsel.
Do you plan to have that conversation with the president?
No.
Did the president speak with the attorney general at all
I
last
can't.
night at the state dinner?
I cannot say if the president had had a conversation with the attorney general last night. What I can refer you to is the White House Counsel's office as it relates to the allegations. They have already addressed this. This is something for them to deal with. I refer you to the Department of Justice on anything else if you don't want to speak to the White House Counsel's office.
And there was
Thanks, guys. Have a great
Was at
weekend.
the father's house.
The House Ways and Means Committee yesterday released documents, their authenticity nowhere challenged. That included a July 2017 WhatsApp message sent by Hunter Biden to Henry Zhao, a Chinese Communist Party official, which stated in its entirety, and I quote, "I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand, and now means tonight. And Z, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows, and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father," unquote. So just a couple of questions about this. First, does this not undermine the president's claim during the 2020 campaign and the reaffirmations of that claim by his two press secretaries since then, that he never once discussed his son's overseas business dealings with him?
No, and I'm not going to comment further on this.
We're good.
I'm not. James, let me save you some. Let me save you some breath. if you're going to ask about this, I am not addressing. I know you do more than I'd like you to have. I am not going to address this issue from this podium. I'm just not going to do it.
All right.
I'm not going to do
Where
it.
was the president on the day that
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great
Son was at
weekend.
the father's house.
The House Ways and Means Committee yesterday released documents, their authenticity nowhere challenged. That included a July 2017 WhatsApp message.
I'm glad we're having this hearing. And thank you to all of the witnesses. Thank you for being here. I want to visit with you in just a second, but I just want to reiterate something that I heard the chairman say that I agree with, which is that there really ought to be government witnesses sitting there. And I tell you what I'm tired of. I've had Secretary Mayorkas sit in front of me in a different committee, the Homeland Security Committee, where I asked him at length about the outrage of 250,000 migrant children, unaccompanied, crossing the border in the last 2 years, and tens of thousands of them being sold into slavery. Let's not mince words. They've been sold into slavery. When kids are being put into factories, forced to work overnight, forced to work in terrible conditions, they're not getting paid, they're not going to school, sometimes they're not getting fed, that's slavery. And what I heard from Secretary Mayorkas, don't take my word for it, you go look at the record, read the transcript. What he told me was, oh, it's not my problem. We don't have anything to do with it. Not my problem. Now we have a new report from HHS where they say it's not their problem. Amazing how this works. Nobody's responsible. These kids are literally being sold as slaves in the United States of America in the year 2023, and nobody's responsible. They don't want to come and testify to this committee. You bet they don't. They don't want to be put under oath. They don't want to answer any questions. They don't want cameras here. They don't want to take any responsibility. Well, I tell you, it's somebody's fault. It's not the kid's fault. Thank God for the New York Times, phrase I never thought would come out of my mouth. But really, I mean, thank the Lord that the New York Times did these series of reports, because otherwise we'd still be fed the lies from this administration that everything is fine and dandy. We know just where the kids are. It's all great. They're all fine. No, it's not. Is it fine that people like Carolina Yuck, who's 15 years old, I apologize to her if I mispronounced her name, she's one of the folks, one of the young women that the New York Times caught up with. What is she doing? Midnight in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a conveyor belt carrying bags of Cheerios past a cluster of young workers. Carolina, every 10 seconds, has to stuff a sealed plastic bag of cereal into a passing yellow carton. It's dangerous work, fast-moving pulleys and gears that had torn off fingers and ripped open a woman's scalp. The factory was full of underage workers like Carolina who'd crossed the southern border by themselves, vulnerable, now spending late nights bent over hazardous machinery in violation of child labor laws. Carolina says, sometimes I get tired and feel sick. Her stomach often hurt. She was unsure if that was because of the lack of sleep, the stress from the incessant roar of the machines, or the worries she had for herself and her family in Guatemala. This is totally, utterly, completely unacceptable. And I am sick unto death of this administration coming before this Congress and saying, it's not our fault, we have nothing to do with it, we don't know where they are, the kids are fine, somebody will do it, somebody will get around to it. Ridiculous. Well, let's look at some of the things that we've learned about what's going on over at HHS that Secretary Becerra is doing. Here's some quotes from employees at HHS. At least 5 Health and Human Services staff members said that they were pushed out after raising concerns about child safety. This is all from the New York Times, by the way. Mr. Becerra told the Office of Refugee Resettlement Director that if she could not increase the number of discharges of children, he'd find somebody who would. Next, 20% of kids have to be released every week or you get dinged. It's a conveyor belt of children being forced through the system. And what's the priority of HHS? Just get them out as fast as we can. They go to factories. They go to slave labor. No. I've written to the FBI and asked the FBI, where are the 80,000 plus children this administration's lost? They don't know. I've said it's your responsibility to go get them. It's a direct violation of child labor laws. They're not doing anything. Nobody's doing anything. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that the administration won't come and sit there and answer questions to this committee is absurd. and it is nothing more than cowardice. They don't want to answer questions. They don't want to be responsible. They don't want to take responsibility for this. So let the record reflect that this administration has let tens of thousands of children be sold into slavery, and they are doing nothing about it. And I hope, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you said that we would be holding additional hearings. We need to have additional hearings. There need to be administration witnesses there, and we need to figure out what in the world is going on and who's to be held accountable for this. Because I tell you what's not an acceptable answer. It's not acceptable to say, it's not my problem. We wish the kids the best. The kids are in danger. The kids are in slavery. The kids are being exploited, and it should not happen in the